Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for logging in to our webinar today. My name is TJ Cantwell. I'm the Executive Director of the NCCCO Foundation. At the NCCCO Foundation, we're working to improve the crane industry for everyone working in the load handling field through research, education, and workforce development. You can learn more about the Foundation programs and other future webinars at our website at ncccofoundation.org. Today, as part of our educational webinar series, we'll be discussing new workforce research the foundation conducted with HumRRO in the first half, excuse me, in the first half of the year, and talking with a recruiter familiar with the industry about how to find quality candidates and how that relates to the research insights. I'll be acting as the moderator. We will conduct a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the Q&A box as we go. We'll address as many as possible during the Q&A portion. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded so that we can share with others who couldn't be with us. By the end of the time today, we hope you will know the highlights of the new research and how you can use the research and other advice to find quality candidates for the many careers in the crane industry. Our two great speakers today are Nate Voss and TraMi Willey. I want to provide a brief biography for each before we get started. Nate Voss, Ph.D., is a research scientist at the at the Human Resources Research Organization, better known as HumRRO. He has over 5 years of experience leveraging research, strategic human capital planning, and project management principles to enhance the effectiveness of public and private sector organizations. His areas of expertise include job analysis and competency modeling, workforce research, survey development, psychometrics, and machine learning. He is currently a member of the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychology and the Personnel Testing Council of Metropolitan Washington. TraMi Willey is a recruiter with MLB and Associates. She works with clients in the construction industry, specifically crane companies, power utilities, commercial and civil construction companies. Her affinity for construction started in the legal field when she was a paralegal for the construction litigation defense. As a recruiter, she works to fill roles such as crane and heavy equipment operators, riggers, mechanics, linemen, technicians, MOT, and Class A drivers, as well as corporate positions. TraMi also provides business services including job market research, growth strategy planning, career fair assistance, and internship development. I welcome to each of you. On behalf of myself and our audience, I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules for being with us today. But enough for me. Let's get into it. Nate, can you please get us started by talking this a little bit about the research report? I will stop my screen sharing and let you share your slides so you can jump right into it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you, TJ. Please let me know if anyone has any issues seeing the slides, though you should be seeing them right now.
We can.
So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present this research. I'm excited to talk to folks today about this recent study that HumRRO did in partnership with the NCCCO Foundation. So just a quick overview, I'm going to provide a brief background about the goals of this research study, briefly also talk about the method, showcase some of the key findings, and then summarize some of the main takeaways and recommendations that resulted from this research. And then we'll conclude with some questions as well. So in terms of the background of this project, this was really motivated by NCCO's foundation's goals of workforce development, education, and research. So this primarily hits on the research, though I think it has implications for some of these other goals as well, as we'll see. And in a lot of ways, this was actually based on a previous research study that we did with the foundation, where we conducted some focus groups and a survey to really better understand the current state of the crane industry. And as a result of this research, there were a lot of unanswered questions and kind of interesting avenues for future research that we sought to address in the current study that I'm going to be talking about today. So some of the key questions that we were aiming to answer for this project are: what occupations are best positioned to transition into the crane industry? What are those occupations that have employees with similar knowledge, skills, etc., that would make them well suited for a career within the crane industry? What occupations have employees who perform similar tasks? And how can knowledge of these various questions, answers to these questions, be used to improve recruitment, facilitate more effective outreach efforts, and enhance career development? These were some of the key questions that we went into this project trying to answer. And ultimately, we really just wanted to generate more interest in a crane career and help folks better recognize what those opportunities are. A goal was also to attract people that would be a good fit within this industry. So, for example, their skills are well aligned with the type of work that happens, and then also just help those already within the field better navigate their career growth. And really, yeah, this project sought to achieve these goals and answer these questions. So, in terms of the method, we selected roles to research based on a career map that was previously developed by the foundation. And we identified some roles there. We refer to those as exemplar roles, and I'll have a little bit more about that in a moment. And as our data source, we primarily relied on the database that's available through the Department of Labor, the Occupational Information Network, or ONET. And this is a really useful data source because it provides standardized information about many jobs that are representative of a very large portion of jobs within the US economy. It's already well researched and validated, and the information is regularly updated. So we used this data source to help inform the current research study. And we looked at 9 job elements and we examined all of the occupations within this database. And again, I'll have some more information about this in a moment. We used a variety of really cool cutting edge methods to group similar occupations and identify those roles that are similar to crane operators and related positions. And then from there, we pulled a lot of additional results and did a lot of different types of analysis. For example, we also considered labor market data, like employment trends. We got some feedback from subject matter experts on the results that we were getting here, and we had lots of conversations back and forth between the foundation and HumRRO about some of the things we were seeing and what some of the key takeaways of this was. And then we did some really detailed comparisons across all those 9 job elements. And really, the goal of all of this was to determine not only what are those roles that are similar to crane operators, but why they should be the focus. And I think that'll become a little bit clearer in a second as I start to kind of dive into this a little bit more. So, just first, a little bit more about those exemplar roles. So, here is the career path that we were using as a basis for this research. So, you can see some of these roles here are highlighted in yellow. Those are the ones that we focused on for this study. That is, we were really interested in understanding, okay, what are roles similar to a general construction worker? What about a rigger? What about a service truck operator? And so forth. So those are the ones that we focused on. And we did that by identifying an analogous ONET job. So, for example, in the career path, it refers to a general construction worker. In ONET, that position is a construction laborer. So, we spent a lot of time kind of sifting through the ONET database and determining, okay, what are those roles that exist there that are currently in the career path? And you can see a summary of those roles here, as well as at the bottom, we examined a couple roles that were only in ONET and not necessarily in the career path, just because we thought that might be worth looking into and there could be some interesting insights to be gained there. Now, I keep talking about like we were interested in identifying similar roles across job elements. Like, what am I talking about here? So, here's just some examples of what those job elements are. So, when I say job elements, we're talking about abilities, knowledge, skills, people's vocational interests. So, for example, their preferences for specific work environments. We were able to gather information about all of these things and use that to determine what roles were most similar. We also were able to do that with tasks, which was kind of interesting. We used some of our advanced methods there as well, because these are just task statements, but we were able to determine what roles perform similar tasks on the job for all those exemplar roles that I had identified previously. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about job elements. It's knowledge, it's skills, and things of that nature. So I know this is going to look completely ridiculous, but I just wanted to show you this to give a sense of the scale of this analysis. So if you could see on the very bottom there, of course, none of us can see, those are the like about the 900 occupations that we examined for this study. And we were really interested in determining which ones were similar, right? So the way this works is we took all of those importance ratings for the skills, the knowledge. We combined all of these data points into basically a single file for analysis and said, okay, based on all this information, what is most similar to a crane operator, for example? So if you were to zoom in on here, you would eventually see the crane and tower operator. And those positions that are most adjacent to it would be those roles that are most similar. So we did this for all the exemplar roles, and it allowed us to very efficiently take a ton of information and basically say, okay, when you're considering all of this, what are those similar occupations? So just want to walk through some of the results of this analysis now. So I'll start off with an overview of some of the key findings. So one of the things that we found in this study is a variety of roles that were similar to those exemplar roles. And these are sort of the expected findings in a sense. So we identified positions such as hazardous materials removal workers, stockers, plumbers, pipe fitters as similar to the crane operator and related positions. In some ways, that's not too surprising, but it is a nice way of at least validating the method and confirming things are working as intended. But we also identified a lot of roles that are not currently well represented within the career path. So things like aircraft mechanics, farm equipment mechanics, service technicians, bus drivers, watercraft service technicians. These were all positions that we determined to be similar to those exemplar roles that were not necessarily included in the career path at that point. And then something else that was kind of interesting, we identified a bunch of novel roles as well. I would describe these as unexpected positions that were very similar. So things like medical equipment repairers, locomotive engineers, wind turbine service technicians, maybe not necessarily things that you would immediately think of as similar to crane operators in the related positions, but the results of our analysis showed that these positions require similar knowledge, skills, and so forth. And we'll have more on that in a bit here. And then there were just a lot of similarities as well across those exemplar roles that we examined, which is really interesting and sort of validates this current career path and how people can have a successful career within the crane industry. So just some examples here. In terms of some of these job elements, control precision is really important, coordination, being someone who is dependable and can tolerate stress, preferring work environments that are outdoors and occur in very physically demanding jobs. Like this is sort of a profile of, someone that exists within this industry. And then throughout this process, like I mentioned, SMEs kind of gave us some feedback about the results, and they indicated that they felt the knowledge, skills, and abilities were the most important of the job elements that we examined, which in some ways isn't too surprising because those are often the standard sorts of things that you would examine for a job. So I'm just going to share some details about the results now, with the caveat that the report's going to have a lot more detailed information and explanation of some of these things. But I just kind of want to showcase a little bit of that here in case anyone's interested in diving deeper into the report. I think this will provide a nice basis for some of this. So one of the things that we did to summarize the findings is for each exemplar role that we examined, we reported and visualized the most important job elements for that position. So in this case, we're looking at skills for crane and tower operators, and we are displaying the skills that were most similar, and we're highlighting those that were considered most important. And this is a way of providing some nice insights in this case about the positions that require similar skills to crane and tower operators. So, for example, one observation based on this visual is that aircraft cargo handling supervisors actually require many of the same sorts of skills that are required by crane operators. And in some cases, these are rated as even more important. So that's potentially a nice role to target for the industry. So just continuing to walk through this and this logic, you can see a similar sort of thing here for the mobile heavy equipment mechanics. So this is showing those roles that we identified as similar to this position, but instead for the work styles, which you can just think of as like personality or personal attributes that someone needs to possess. So in this case, we found that compared to mobile heavy equipment mechanics, it looks like the aircraft mechanics require very similar sorts of work styles or personality. That is, attention to detail is really important. Being a dependable person is really important. Having integrity is important, and so forth. And then just one last example of this is for the light truck drivers, and this is for abilities. So one of the interesting findings here is that locomotive engineers actually require many of the same abilities that make light truck drivers successful. So these are just a few examples of some of the insights that we have in our report and ways of not only knowing what roles are similar, but why those roles are similar. So like I mentioned, we also looked at tasks as a part of this project. And we were able to do some cool analysis to quickly summarize that information as well. So again, just a couple examples of that here. We can see construction laborers and other positions and tasks that they perform that are very similar. So just as an example, if you look at the second one there, construction laborers, they control traffic passing near or in around work zones. Highway maintenance workers, they set out signs and cones around work areas to divert traffic. So like the task is kind of similar. You can get that sense when you're comparing them. And this analysis allowed us to very quickly and efficiently compare these roles and see where those similarities were in terms of the behaviors being performed on the job. Here's just the second example. This is for pump operators. Again, you can see that compared to some of those other roles there, like the wind turbine service technician, the tank car, truck, and ship loaders, there's some very similar work tasks that are being done by both of those roles. And again, this allows for easy targeting of common tasks across the various roles that we examined and provides a very efficient way to compare across jobs. If you're going to try to do this manually, you can imagine the many thousands of combinations and comparisons you'd have to do, but our report actually kind of lays out all of the most similar tasks so this can be done more efficiently. We did something similar for something called detailed work activities, and those are just tasks, but at a higher level. So you can kind of see some examples of that here, where we're comparing some of the work behaviors again that are enacted by industrial machinery mechanics and a bunch of similar roles. So you can see the detailed work activities or the higher level work behaviors that are engaged in this role are very similar for medical equipment repairs and maintenance workers, which is pretty interesting, I think. And then a similar sort of thing here for the operating engineers. You can see that there's similar work behaviors that are engaged in within that role and then various other roles that we examined. Excuse me. So, like I mentioned, we also compared the exemplar roles. So, again, a lot of information here, not expecting you to digest all of this, but this is just to sort of highlight again some of the results that we have in the report. And in this case, we're looking at work styles. Again, those are like those personal qualities that people need to be successful. And we're seeing a lot of similarities across all of those exemplar roles in the career path. So it's really critical for people to be dependable, have attention to detail, have integrity, be able to cooperate with each other. Those are really important for success. And this provides a nice sort of way to holistically determine what is most important to be successful in these roles. Here's some other examples of work values, of vocational interests when you're comparing the exemplar roles. Again, a very similar sort of thing here. And in this case, these suggest that these roles all value supportive working environments, relationships are important, and realistic vocational interests are very important, which again refers to physical, sort of outdoor types of work. So that's not too surprising. But again, it's a nice way to sort of validate the findings and understand what those most important things are. And if that wasn't enough, there's actually a lot of other additional sort of supplemental results. I'll just quickly highlight this information. Details again are in the report. So one of the things that we pulled for all these roles that we examined was employment trends. We thought this could be kind of interesting to have as a supplement, especially if the results here are used for outreach and recruitment purposes, just to get a sense of what the trajectories might look like over the next decade or so. That can provide some nice insights about, okay, this particular role is expected to grow a lot, this one isn't. That might also be useful information to have for a recruitment purpose. So we included that in the report. And then something else we did, which I think is kind of interesting. So all the results that I've shown so far, we looked at all those different job elements all at once. That is, we're like, okay, based on skills and knowledge and tasks and all those things, what are the most similar roles? And that's really interesting, but it might not, you might lose out on some really nuanced insights. So something else we did, which is in the report, is we looked at similar roles based on each job element separately. So for example, if you're interested in just saying, okay, based on just the skills, what are the most similar roles to construction laborers in this example here? You can see that there's some additional roles that were identified there that weren't identified previously. So it's a nice way to get some even more detailed insights about where those commonalities lie across roles. And then again, we asked some subject matter experts to sort of indicate what they think the most important job elements are. Like we looked at a lot of things here, so we really wanted to get a sense of, what's most important to focus on. And SMEs sort of indicated that the abilities, knowledge, and skills are what's most important for success in the industry. So that was kind of a nice way to contextualize some of these findings. And again, there's a lot more in the report. This is just an example of some of those results and insights. Pardon me. So, as a reminder, here were some of the key questions that we were trying to answer for this project. I won't go through all of them again because I read them earlier, but again, we are primarily interested in trying to understand what are those similar occupations and how can this information be used to help with recruitment, outreach, career development, and so forth. And something I want to mention that I think is important is that I bet everyone on this call here probably has some thoughts on these questions and some insights, and that's really useful information. And in some ways, the previous research study that we did with the foundation that I mentioned earlier was, asking people these questions, and we're getting a lot of really great insights from that effort. But the purpose of the current research study was really to identify those unknowns versus the things that were known, and we all sort of know going into this, like, okay, yeah, obviously, like, this is a position we should target for recruitment. Let's do that. The goal of this study was to really try and figure out what are those things that we aren't thinking about but that we should be thinking about. So I think that's a nice strength of the approach that we took here for the current study and can nicely complement the various perspectives and expertise that people already have about these questions. So, with that said, there were a few key takeaways and recommendations that emerged from this research. So, the first one concerns just expanding upon that career path and identifying roles that are currently not as well represented. So, farm equipment mechanics, aircraft mechanics, bus mechanics, tree trimmers, these were all positions that we identified as very similar. And this suggests some new roles to target for recruitment. And it again provides a reason for why you should want to target some of these roles. So it's because there is skill alignment. It's because there's, going to be a high likelihood of success. There's good person job fit. So it provides that explanation as to why roles are similar. And then it suggests some new paths for potentially progressing within one's career and where some developmental opportunities might be present. So a second takeaway slash recommendation is potentially the focus on some of those unexpected roles that we identified. So while these are roles that one might not necessarily think of as similar to those in the crane industry, the results of our study indicated that they are, and they kind of laid out those specific areas where those similarities are. And that's really useful information to have. Um, and it suggests that certain skills and knowledge generalize across different roles. So, a lot of times when you're thinking about who's going to be most successful in the industry, you might think of a specific role. What the results of this study show is that it could be useful to think of first, like, okay, what are the specific skills and knowledge that are needed for success? And then you can go identify roles where those skills and knowledge are present. So it suggests some new roles to potentially target for outreach and again suggests some alternative career paths. Now, like I mentioned, there was a lot of similarity in the results that we were seeing across those exemplar roles. That's with regard to the work context, the skills, the abilities needed, and so forth. So, an example like profile of someone within the crane industry might be something like this. They value supportive work environments. They frequently interact with other people. Teamwork's really important. You need both hard and soft skills. So things like being able to operate mechanical equipment was important, but so is communication. Like both are quite important for success, as is being a dependable and detailed oriented person, and then just having the ability to understand where problems are likely to occur. Like these were all indicated as important. These are different job elements. So you can imagine someone who possesses all of these is going to be successful within the industry. And that's really useful because it can also help potentially with outreach and allow one to create more targeted messages about what is required for success within the field, especially for those who have no knowledge of what they need to enter the field. Knowing what is important can be really helpful in that regard. And this is also really useful, I think, for career development because what this study does is it shows what those skills, those knowledges, and so forth that are most important. And that can help with upskilling or even gaining new skills entirely. If you see something there that you recognize is maybe not an area that is a strength of yours, but at large is something that's valuable within the industry. So one final recommendation and takeaway here is just how you can use these results to not only facilitate recruitment of those outside of the industry, but to help promote growth of those already within the industry. So, for example, this can suggest alternative jobs, alternative career paths. It might also be useful for identifying new entry points within the industry as well. So, just as an example, one of the things we found is that vehicle cleaners, equipment cleaners, and locomotive engineers were often identified as similar to other positions within the industry. But the importance ratings were a little bit lower for, like a cleaner, for example, than a locomotive engineer. So it kind of suggests useful points of entry, and that, something like that is going to be a better entry level position to target than something that requires more skills and knowledge and so forth. And then, of course, this helps target specific skills, knowledge, and so forth for further development and progression, and helping identify where gaps might exist within one's current role. So again, just a couple final comments here. The report contains a ton of other really interesting findings. If you found this useful, I definitely encourage you to check that out. It's also worth noting that the results here might generalize beyond the roles that we examine. For example, if you know what skills are important, what work styles are important, that can help you target additional roles as well. And it's also worth noting that the jobs that we looked at for this research project, they might have dozens, if not hundreds, of analogous job titles. So if you saw some of the positions that we examined and thought that maybe that's not relevant to your situation, I just wanted to mention that there are a lot of different job titles, and they might be reflective of the positions that we examined in this study. So it could actually be quite relevant. So, with that said, I just want to thank you, everyone, for being here and listening. I hope this was interesting, and happy to take questions at the end. But TJ, I think for now, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, thanks, Nate. Yeah, and thanks for the kicking us off the first half of this. That overview is fantastic. I appreciate it. So, I thought it'd be useful to also have somebody else that is her daily job is to help recruit people for different industries, and she's got a lot of experience working with the construction industry, the crane industry specifically. And before I jump into that, I wanted to also share with everybody on the screen right now is a link to the report that Nate was just discussing. I think I'm going to put it into the chat as well. So you can all have a link. It's available right now on our website. As Nate said, there's a lot of other detailed information in there. that he didn't have time to cover, but he gave a good overview of how you can use this research and kind of the highlights out of it. But you can really dig into it. There's a whole lot of data in there and a lot of specifics of if you're looking for specific positions and what skills are comparable and what things that would be good to look for in potential candidates, quality candidates. And so I encourage everybody to look into that. If you have a question that you'd like to propose, or like TraMi after she's done, or Nate to answer, please put it into the chat, or sorry, put it in the Q&A section of Zoom. That's the best way to be able to ask a question. We'll get to that to as many as at the end as possible. Again, I wanted to kind of jump into the next section here with TraMi Willey, who is a recruiter for MLB and Associates, and we have her talk about kind of her experiences. So to get us started, TraMi, just remind me and everybody that's participating a
Sure.
little bit again about your role and kind of what your experience is with the construction, recruiting for construction and crane industry specifically.
Okay, thanks TJ for having me, and thanks everybody for being here. It's nice to be able to connect with everyone. So my role is recruitment and talent acquisition for clients. So clients will retain our services for direct hires, full-time permanent positions. And most of my work, if not all of my work, is within the construction industry. So we work with clients that are in heavy civil construction, commercial construction, power utilities, cranes, and anything adjacent to that. And so within my capacity, not only do I work in field operation positions, so hydrovac, truck operators, crane operators, riggers, oilers, mechanics, mobile technicians, or mobile mechanics and tower crane technicians, but I also do corporate roles as well. So in the same day, I will talk to field operators, and then I will also switch over and talk to IT, office administrator, accounting, you name it. So it kind of runs the gamut.
Yeah, great. So yeah, definitely a lot of different experience with different roles and things from the field to the office and in variety of industries. So, after hearing about what Nate's talking about and the reason we did the research in general to
Sure.
try to help identify other places we can be looking. I mean, the real reason we did it was kind of the idea that there is challenges to be able to find, people that are experienced when you're trying to fill positions, especially in the crane industry. What kind of challenges? What are some typical challenges that you've experienced and probably know that others experience too?
Sure. So there's many, many challenges. Recruiting, especially for the crane industry, is so difficult, and I commend anybody out there trying to do it because it's a tough thing. So I'll highlight just some of the ones that come up the most often, and I would say the biggest one that I would say is a challenge. The traditional job boards that used to be effective are no longer effective. Job seekers for the crane industry are no longer applying the way that they used to. So it used to be you put up a job posting, you get an array of resumes and qualified candidates, and you can pick who and choose whoever you want to talk to. And it was a short, easy, fast process. It is no longer that way. Skilled operators, riggers, mechanics, they are very difficult to reach. And so it has become more of a talent acquisition process. And when it becomes that, it needs to be strategic. It is very time consuming, and it is a numbers game. And so imagine that you are looking for just a couple of guys. Hey, how long could that possibly take? Expect that you will need to go through a lot of people in order to identify those candidates that best fit your company culture and the job requirement. Another trend that I've seen that creates quite the challenge is that candidates nowadays have additional motivations that go beyond a great compensation package, a great benefits package, and a safe working environment. It is no longer that way. And so understanding those motivations, they're not clear and they're not easy. And so when you're dealing with intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, not knowing where the candidate is coming from, it makes it difficult for you to, tell them that your opportunity is wonderful and your company is great, they may have a focus on something else that is more important. And so that's why this study was remarkable, because you identify some factors that can help with understanding motivations so that recruitment and, more importantly, retention is more successful.
Well, yeah, thanks. Again, it sounds like you hit a bunch of things that I've heard people talk about where they're
Sure.
struggling to try to get find people in this industry. You mentioned a couple of the kind of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators and stuff like that. Just not there's I'm sure there's a million of them,
Mm.
but just any particular ones that stand out to you in terms of like again, especially the intrinsic ones or things like that that might be obviously money. People need to make a living. Anything
Sure.
else that you've experienced where it's like that was again a motivator that needs to be considered in certain cases?
Support from leadership is a big one, and that was identified in the study I saw. I was happy to see that. Other things that I've heard from candidates are that, yeah, it was a great job, but I had ideas that I wanted to talk about. They want to feel like they can contribute. They're very passionate about the work, the job. They want to be able to contribute their ideas, and they don't feel like they were given an opportunity to be heard. And it could be something very innocent as, listen, your leadership, your management's team, they are very, very busy. I mean, they barely have time, if at all, to eat and take a break. So making the time to listen to a candidate, that can be tough. But what happens on the candidate side is that they feel unheard, they feel unimportant. And so those are some of the motivators that I've heard why things that are important now to candidates.
Yeah, those are good ones. And again, ones that potentially are from some other work studies we've done too, related to, and not just the youth, but strongly with youth, tend to look for
Yeah.
things like that, to opportunities to speak with management or provide ideas
Right.
and things like that. So it's not just about a paycheck in all cases, and feel like they're making a contribution to their community and to the organization itself. So I appreciate that you sharing that. So, given all that and the kind of difficulties that that you've laid out that other people have probably experienced, are there other places, like what other kind of places have you looked try to find quality candidates that would fit some of the criteria that Nate laid out earlier?
Sure. Yeah, and great, Nate, great job, and tough act to follow. So I'm gonna do my best. So some other areas, I connect with crane training schools, of course. So that's kind of a norm, like crane instructors. I network with them and kind of keep abreast of opportunities and candidates that they identify as superstars coming out of their programs. But I'm sure everybody else in the crane industry does the same thing. From personal experience, I've had some really great success in finding candidates in the marine, and port industries. So those kinds of operators, there's a lot of similar and overlap. So they'll operate other types of cranes. They are familiar with rigging, with safety, with things like repair and mechanic upkeep. And so those areas yielded some really, really great candidates. Let's see, power utilities. So sometimes what happens, because I do recruit for both industries, sometimes what happens is somebody who's in the power utility industry, they're excited, they start a career there, and then for whatever reason, it just doesn't fit well. And they have these skills and they need to find another career path that utilizes those skills to build upon. And so where can that be? They want to make comparable money. They want to utilize those skills. They like working outdoors. And so the crane industry has been very useful in finding them a soft landing spot when it comes to that. Um, One of my favorite candidate pools, veterans. So the military service people, depending on what their duties were during their service, but if they were involved in construction, it is such a treasure trove. So you are talking about people who may have built bridges, barracks, entire bases. They understand about project management. They understand about heavy equipment operation. They themselves may have operated a crane, have operated other heavy equipment. They understand about fleet. They've operated Class A vehicles. And hey, by the way, these are people who understand about structure, timeliness, responsibility, teamwork, and they are very, very respectful. And so military service members are part of my favorite pool to pull from. My favorite, one of my favorite operators, he started his career, and this is a one-off because this is not something you see often, but he started his career as a pilot for a submersible remotely controlled vehicle. So those vehicles that are used to do research or to help with the structure and the maintenance of offshore drilling. He used to be a pilot and control those vehicles, and he wanted to find a position that was land-based and not continue to be out at sea. And so he transitioned into a crane operator, went to school, and he's just a really great person on top of being a skilled operator. So he's one of my favorite people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did he find you, or were you
No, I connected with him because I was trying to fill a job, and he ended up not taking the job, but we just continued to maintain a relationship because he's just a great resource for me to ask questions
yeah.
about the industry. Yeah.
That is interesting though. They can
Yep.
find a variety
Yeah.
of different people in unusual places, right?
Yes.
If you're looking for the type of skills and not necessarily the specific, a specific role or something like that. So having read through and hearing from Nate and having read through the research report that we talked about earlier, was there any information in there that kind of reinforces what you're already doing in the industry, or provided any new ideas in terms of unusual suspects and usual places to start looking
Sure.
from your
Yeah.
perspective?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the reinforcement. So I was happy to see that a lot of the exemplar and comparison roles that were mentioned. It's interesting when I go back and look through the candidates that I have either connected with or placed, and they are highly successful. When I look back through their resumes and their profiles, a lot of these exemplar roles and comparison roles show up. So, for example, pipe fitters and vegetation management, foundation drillers, digger derrick operators. There's also guys that drove cement trucks and dump trucks. And on top of that, there are people that I have placed in their background, farm mechanics, so farm equipment mechanics. So those had great skills for mobile mechanics. And then the hazardous materials removal and refuse and recycling collectors too. So those are the ones that I've seen in the background of candidates that I've connected with or placed that kind of are that reinforce the study. The novel areas that the study identified that I do not have any experience in recruiting, but I found very interesting. For example, the aircraft cargo handling supervisors. I know nothing about them, and so I did a little bit of a deeper dive. And it turns out that these are individuals who have experience in loading, unloading, securing cargo, weight calculation, weight limitations, and ground operations. And these are all skills that are very important to be successful in the crane industry. So that is definitely a pool that I will be exploring in the future. So thank you very much, TJ and the foundation, because you've provided some other areas for me to explore. Wind turbine service technicians, that again, individuals that have a skill set upon which to build a career path in the crane industry, because these are individuals that are accustomed to working at height, working in confined spaces. They are knowledgeable about hydraulics, control and gear systems and schematics. And so very good skill base to build upon if you're looking for an alternative career path. And the one that I really was fascinated with and that I was most skeptical about was the medical equipment repairers, because at first glance, my instinctive reaction was, that's really different. That's a lot different equipment. Medical is primarily indoors. And so there seems to be a high learning curve there. But if we're talking about long-term, building a candidate pipeline for future generations, these medical equipment repairers, these are guys potentially who know how to operate a company vehicle, who are in charge of a set of tools that they maintain, who understand a schedule of being required to be in multiple different places in the same day, who will need to work on various equipment, who also can fill out service logs and document their work, order parts and follow up. So again, if we're looking at future pipeline, long-term career development, these are really good skills to take advantage of.
Thanks. And so you're already kind of touching on my next question, but
Oh, okay.
if you've got any other thoughts too, just kind of so some of the areas that were highlighted and compared in the research that Nate talked about, like the abilities, the skills, kind of styles, interests, knowledge, all the ways that they really broke down every job to see what was a good comparison. Do you think are there any areas that you specifically thought were, again, in your experience, kind of more important or were of interest, I guess, as far as those kind of things that to focus on. Again, you already kind of talked about that, but anything else you want to add about that?
I think that they're all important. But what the great thing about the study is that all these different job elements from a recruiting talent acquisition standpoint can be applied at different stages of the process. So as a recruiter, with my clients, employers, hiring managers, the things that you're going to focus first on are what the SMEs identified. You're going to focus on abilities, knowledge, and skills because you've got your job description, you've got the essential jobs and duties, and then you are looking at a resume or a candidate profile, and you want to make sure that both of those are a lot of commonalities. So, the more things that fit the job description, the more successful and fitting that candidate is. So those are hugely important. If I were to identify some other elements that I think make a difference when I speak to a candidate that I identify as, wow, this person is really somebody who my client needs to talk to, it's going to be context and styles. So context indicates a comfort level. If you have somebody who already has dexterity, precision control, response coordination, you've got somebody who has additional great skills on top of whatever requirements are for the role. And then style. This is somebody who understands to be dependable, to be reliable. This guy, is he going to show up on the job site with the client and be on time or be early, be able to interface with the client, understands how to work as a team and independently as well. So those factors are really important in addition to the abilities, knowledge, and skills. And then when you get to the other end of the employment, you're talking about retention. Once you find the right person, you have to keep that person. There's a lot of job movement out there in the crane industry. A lot of candidates are moving from job to job. And that's where work value comes in, because work value talks about things that directly relate to job satisfaction. So job satisfaction is that factor that is going to keep your talent with you. So if you have a bad day, job satisfaction is going to make the bad days tolerable and the good days even better. It's going to make you happy in your career and very passionate. So I would identify, in addition to the job, the skills, knowledge, and abilities, those other factors are important to focus on at different stages of the recruiting process.
Very nice. So, you mentioned just so one or two more questions. We'll get in Q&A, but you mentioned the kind of need to continue to expand the pipeline, which we want to do and help do for this industry. Are there, what are some of the things you think companies, unions, training companies, basically anybody that's doing recruiting for this industry, what are things could we do to help expand that pipeline and improve recruiting? Like where to go, how to do those kind of things?
Well, for companies, I would encourage you to, if it's in the realm of possibilities, partner with the union and connect and partner with crane training schools as well, because those resources are always going to have fresh candidates. So that's a good resource to have. Internally, I would encourage clients to be successful at recruiting. In the short term, you need to have somebody dedicated who has the time. It is such a time-consuming process. It is unbelievable how time-consuming it is. And so throwing an hour at it here and an hour at it there, which is what leadership only has available, it's very, very difficult to be successful because of how much focus and attention it takes. And so having a dedicated person to continue to move the process forward is very, very important. And then in the long term, be open to these non-traditional roles. This is science-based information that gives you different areas of people to talk to. candidates to just have a conversation with, because it's very important to be open-minded as we build candidates or the candidate pipeline for the future. And because all of my clients, my contacts, I know you guys, you live, breathe cranes. You have this internal tuning fork. You have this instinct when you talk to candidates, whether they are traditional roles or non-traditional roles. You identify pretty quickly if they're going to be successful or if they're not going to last a day out there. And so use that tuning fork as a tool when you talk to these non-traditional roles, and then connect with the community. One of my favorite events is Touch a Truck, and you can either host it or you can participate in it, but there's nothing better than having a real life Tonka toy in full size out in the field and having kids come up and explore it. Because the thing is, the parents that bring their families to these events, they're probably already in the industry or adjacent to the industry, and so they could be future candidates. And it gives you an opportunity to talk to people when they're not on their best behavior for an interview. So you get to hear their values, you get to hear how they interact with other people, how they interact with their family, and just have a social conversation. So those are areas that can really improve recruitment.
And you mentioned Touch a Truck. Have you had which I think are great, and have you had any
Mhm.
experience with or success with career fairs or working with CTE programs or the schools or things like that in the communities?
Yeah, so we partner a lot with our clients to attend career fairs in the industry to help them build internships if they don't have an internship program already. And we tend to volunteer at a lot of career fairs and participate in those. So we've had some good success in finding candidates for our clients in specialized areas. So, not for I haven't attended a career fair with any of my crane clients, but I had recently last year attended a career fair for one of my aircraft clients, and we were able from one of the career fairs to fill all of their positions. So it's really important to be able to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. So I
Sure.
want to leave a couple minutes here. I know we're coming towards the end for some question and answer. If anybody has any questions for either TraMi or Nate, please feel free to enter them into the chat or probably better into the Q&A portion of it. There was a couple questions, so just kind of going for back to you, Nate, quickly. Um, the is there anything different? I guess did you see any similarities or differences between like this industry versus any other industries? Like the kind of the research that you've done for occupational stuff, like are these common things that other industries are trying to do or look at? And was there anything in the results kind of that you thought were unique or interesting compared to some other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll kind of answer this, I don't know, maybe in a slightly different sense. So, like, one of the cool things about this study, compared to like what's typically done, is just the general method and way that we approach this. So, a lot of times, like, research that's being done to understand industry trends is going to be more similar to that initial study that we did that I alluded to earlier, where we're conducting focus groups, administering a survey, trying to, gauge information in that sense, which is really, really helpful, really useful. And it's going to give you a great summary of what people's perspectives are. But where I think this study is quite nice and can complement sort of that typical, industry research is the way we went about this was more trying to identify what are those unknowns, like what are those things that we should be thinking about that aren't thinking about. And that's not through any fault of our own. It's just, we come into things with a certain perspective and opinion, and we have our blind spots. So I thought this study was kind of cool in the sense that it was able to address that sort of thing, which isn't as common. And because of that, like we got a lot of good results that I think, as you both were mentioning earlier, like affirm a lot of things that you've been seeing in the recruitment space, but also some new things that are kind of interesting. And upon first glance, it's like, wait, what did you find? But then it's like all of a sudden, well, actually, there's maybe something to that. So I think those sorts of novel insights are a strength of the design that we use here. And to me, at least, that kind of stands out, compared to how other research might occur for this type of thing.
Ah, great. Yeah, again, I think hopefully it will provide people with the some new ideas and information that maybe there is not available in other industries. TraMi, for you, you mentioned again the kind of traditional job boards aren't necessarily the place to be looking and stuff like that. Have you had any success with social media? If so, what kind? If not, why not? Or any recommendations kind of like on that side of like trying to do recruitment on a social media side?
Social media is very tough. So when it comes to the positions that are found on LinkedIn, then that is something where social media is easy to use. But there are other positions. So when you're talking about things like maybe an oiler or a rigger or a construction laborer, those are not generally found on LinkedIn, although you can these days, you can find them. So when you're talking about just general social media, the problem is um, it's not as useful and productive because you have more people who want to just chime in versus useful candidates that you can actually connect with. But another way that you can use social media is that if there is an organization or a group that does a posting, then you can see who is commenting, and you can do some background research on those people to see, hey, this is somebody who's qualified for position or not. So um, I wouldn't say that posting a job on social media yields a lot of candidates, but you can use it with different strategy.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, again, I think you hit a bunch of points. It's true. It's difficult to, you got a lot of other voices right out there that
Yeah,
maybe not too helpful in the recruitment search, but using that as
right.
a tool to do some background and other things
Mhm.
like that seems like a good approach. And I guess, one last question here before we wrap up. And again, just kind of for both of you, but TraMi probably specifically, and Nate, if you've got any thoughts based on the research that was done, if people, if they're looking to improve and to do more stuff, is there any place, or maybe they're just starting, to do recruitment now and focusing in on internally, like any suggestions on where to start? Like, you named a bunch of different things that could be done to help expand the pipeline and find people and
Mhm.
things like that. If I'm just looking like, what's my first step? Where should I start to try to recruit some people? What would be your suggestions?
Um, from my end, I would say again, having a dedicated person is of primary importance. Somebody who can commit the time, because it's like any other project. I mean, you wouldn't plan a critical lift without putting time, effort, and collaboration into it. And recruitment is the same way because you're looking for quality people. And so designating the right person with the ability to focus on it is of primary importance. I would start there and identify the right person. So everybody knows that really talented operator who is brilliant at his job or her job, um, but probably is not the most talkative person. That's not the person you want to do recruitment. That's not the person that you want to engage with um, schools or anything like that. You want somebody who likes engaging with people, who likes teaching and sharing knowledge and sharing information, because that creates an interest. It creates an energy with candidates where they respond well to that. And so I think that's very helpful.
Awesome. Anything to add, Nate?
Just I'll real quick say, like, obviously, TraMi, you're the expert here, so I'll not speak too much to this, but I'll just say, like, from more of, like an organizational perspective, as well as within the context of this research, like this report is certainly not the end all be all, like nothing ever is, but I think it's a really good resource, and it's a nice complement to organizations who are looking to better understand how to effectively recruit for those within the industry. So I'll just kind of say that that's how I view this research, and yeah, just that's a nice way to sort of supplement some of the things that are currently being done.
Awesome. Well, that's a good transition to just let everybody know before we sign off that we're going to have future webinars and announcements about the product, the different resources we have available from the foundation. We're working on putting together more webinars for 2025, so keep a lookout on our website for that information. We also will be sharing a recording of this webinar that'll be available in the next week or so, and we'll be putting that on our social media on LinkedIn. And I'll be sending a brief survey to all attendees soon. So I ask that you please take a few minutes to complete it. We'd love to have your feedback so we can help keep improving these webinars going forward. But I want to just take a second to thank again Nate and TraMi for being with us. Thanks to everyone who's been able to join this very informative, in my opinion, webinar. I really appreciate you guys providing your expertise and spending some time with us today. And hope that you have a great rest of the week. Thanks for everybody for attending. I hope you learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.